the cultural phenomena that inspired an entire generation to run like fucking idiots. Love it or hate it, Masashi Kishimoto's Naruto was one of the most impactful anime in recent history, bringing in a large Western audience and pushing the envelope of fight choreography and how truly good a serialized shonen can look in emotion, well, most of the time. Making up 1/3 of the Big Three, the coveted trinity of popular shonen elite at the time, Naruto and its continuation Naruto Shippuden was the talk of the playground, the high school cafeteria, digital passerbys on online forums and YouTube comments, convention centers, and heck, kids were going to libraries just to track down volumes of the manga that were oh so behind at the time. Naruto had become a language, a rite of passage, but for me, a longtime fan of anime, manga, and all that other Japanese stuff, with an anime completion list boasting more than 500 plus titles, I had still never found my ninja way. I still hadn't watched, read, or even knew much about it outside of Believe It and the white noise of jutsus and long Japanese character names I overheard from the chatter amongst several friend groups. And don't get me wrong, I love shonen, I love that part in the Blue Exorcist Kyoto Saga OP where the drums come in and the music gets all funky, you know what I'm talking about? The part in Get Backers where it just sucked. Zatch Bell when Kiddo, okay, a little too soon for that. That tournament arc in Yu Yu Hakusho, who could, no, not that tournament arc, no, the other one, yeah. There you go. So yeah, chances are you read the title of this video. I not only finally crossed this hurdle in my illustrious anime watching career, I fully cleared it, partaking in what can only be described as a sickening amount of Naruto binging, one that would require only the strongest medical jutsu to recover from. But I loved it, and I am impressed at how truly supportive the Naruto community is, and yes, I'm just saying that in a hope to deter some commenter named Anime Lover 69 from calling me a pussy ass little bitch after trashing their OTP. 80 plus hours of shurikens, kunai, jutsu, and everything in between. Later, I completed Naruto and Naruto Shippuden in just a little over a month, and while I'm sure the Naruto community on YouTube has long since used their Sharingan, scrubbing through and analyzing and discussing just about every facet this long-running shinobi-filled series has to offer, I do feel that there is value in sharing my fresh opinions on the series from someone who experienced the ebbs and flows of this 15-year long-running anime in just over a couple of weeks. I didn't go into this anime expecting to make a video on it after coming out of it, so my notes are limited, my thoughts disjointed, and I apologize ahead of time if I fail to track down every single relevant scene or moment I am referring to and miss out on showing that one specific time Naruto said "believe it" with just a little bit more gusto. I'm sorry, there's a whole lot of anime here. And of course, full spoiler warning ahead for the rest of the video as we jump from arc to arc. And with that said, Jiraiya dies, Tobi is Obito, and Naruto becomes Hokage, with the last remaining member of the Big Three still sailing the Grand Line, and with the recent breakout success in the shonen landscape like Hero Academia, from Land of the Waves to whatever this is, let's talk about some Naruto. Naruto and its sizable continuation in the form of Naruto Shippuden were always daunting from an outsider looking in, not because of their length, One Piece fan by the way, but from the muddling caused by its filler. And this isn't your ordinary filler arc shenanigans, but don't worry, there's still plenty of those. This is exploring that gray area of mostly canon and mostly filler episodes where the viewer has to sit through repeat scene after repeat scene, flashback after flashback, friendship speech after friendship speech, jutsu explanation after jutsu explanation for that one canon manga panel of Naruto sniffing his ass. I don't know. I shouldn't need 2 filler lists and an informative Reddit guide to watch your series, but luckily I don't need one anymore. Enter Naruto Kai, the unofficial fan edit of the entirety of Naruto put together by Clog Mankey and other members of the community, turning what was once an unmanageable showcase of every known variety of filler into a condensed 72 episode representation of the source material. Is it perfect? No, not really. Episode rips, especially those found about the midpoint of Shippuden, I found are at times low-quality TV Tokyo uploads or Kiss anime watermarked rejects and abrupt pausing and questionable editing that can at times take you out of any given 1 hour plus episodes that closely mirror the original volumes of the manga. It's also hard to believe that this project was resubbed and built from the ground up with so many weird rips and hard-coded subtitles, but I don't want to get into conspiracy theories. But for what it is, the limited workforce, the sheer size of the saga that is Naruto, and that being done purely out of passion, this project is nothing short of a miracle. However, Naruto Kai feels like more of a patch job rather than a full-on solution for the series' pacing issues. A lot of complaints towards how Naruto's story flows lies not only within its filler and non-canon material, but what the creator himself wrote and decided on in the manga. So many arcs just feel like they should have ended 2 or 3 fights ago, and the overuse of flashbacks, repeat jutsu explanations, and exposition easily hamper and contrast the fights of this battle manga, acting against it rather than helping develop and move them forward. I mean, you just can't start off a conversation about characters without first talking about the titular Naruto. Starting out, I found he was annoying, but then again, so did basically everyone in the cast, so it's a little bit intentional. He has a troubled past, his own inner demons, if you will, and a literal inner demon inside of him, and besides, in the second episode, Konohamaru is introduced as if it's the creator's way to say, well, if you think the main character's annoying, check out this little shit. But really, going into the series and just from clips and pictures I saw online, I was prepared to just despise this character, but I was actually surprised at how much fun he was and felt like those pieces of dialogue like, this isn't the same Naruto as before, or he's changed, were pretty earned and believable. Sure, was I tired of his dead parents and swing-sitting antics? Of course. Was he inconsistently stupid, like forgetting the name of Edo Tensei or Son Goku's name seconds after hearing it, but somehow instantly remembering the kid from Land of the Waves like 4 years later? But all in all, I really did like him, which is good because the series is sort of named after him, so he's in it quite a bit. Why does everyone hate Sakura, you bunch of sexist pigs? But really, Sakura is pretty fucking unbearable up until her big moment in Chunin. I get what they were doing with her, but she was really annoying, from her inner monologues that were never funny to her just being downright mean to Naruto most of the time for basically no reason. The other main argument I see against her is that she's weak and or useless, take your pick. And yeah, she sort of is, but when you were paired with the reincarnated Wonder duo, it's hard not to be even a little bit overshadowed. Her medical jutsu has several uses throughout part 2, and she has a really humanizing moment towards the end of the war when face to face with Madara and Kaguya, of her just being completely and utterly scared and feeling so powerless. All in all, I thought she was fine. But hey, let's talk about Sasuke. I'm sure I'll be getting some rather colorful comments and a dash of red to my like-dislike ratio for this one, but I could not stand Sasuke throughout most of Shippuden, and I guess that's kind of the point. Here I have some unedited footage of his moral compass in action. Part 1 Sasuke was edgy, pretentious, and full of himself, but he did show some moments of humanity and compassion for his fellow teammates, and he was a fun character with his stupid little smirk and playful insults to Naruto. But all it takes is one dead brother to have him lose basically all emotion and intrigue, shifting his focus into killing and destroying literally all of Konoha, including the innocents, children, elderly, including, I assume, his plan's a little bit, He's very much the Vegeta to Naruto's Goku if Vegeta wanted to just destroy Earth after every arc. Luckily, I enjoyed his A-team shenanigans and Sugatsu's and Karin's personalities clashing with his far more stoic nature that helped me stay invested in his character, and I'm glad I did, and I'm not sure how much this says about me as a person, but Sasuke wanting to later kill all of the Kages and become this immortal force to stop the inevitable strife and conflict in the shinobi world seemed like a pretty justified, grounded plan. I really like Hinata, and her pair of Hinatas. She's essentially the only kind and understanding female character that does not partake in the physical violence, mental abuse, and the pure sass that the others do. This may on the surface make her rather one-note and way less interesting than the other characters, but her pure dedication to the little shitter that is Naruto from such an early age It's just so admirable and sweet, and watching her be the only one to enter the pain pit was just an incredible moment and really cemented her as not necessarily one of the strongest of the female cast, but definitely one of the bravest. Yamato is easily one of my favorite characters in the anime, despite him being a clone, a literal copy of the first Hokage sharing wood release. His subtle characterization throughout the series does enough for him to have a nice arc of showing that despite a childhood of test tubes and being used, he's still his own man. There's also a level of gratitude for his past, because without it he'd still be living the life in the shadows through the Anbu rather than giving the opportunity to support Naruto, Team 7, and Konoha as a whole in a far more personal way. Wood release jutsu is always fantastic, and thanks to the flashbacks of the first Hokage in action alongside his reveal in Edo Tensei, it's nice to see the differences between Hashirama using the jutsu as a declaration of just pure strength, while Yamato's is far more refined mending, with his passion for architecture reflecting more of a utility rather than purely offensive. All of his reactions are fantastic. His relationship with Kakashi as this kind of senpai figure I find to be even more interesting and fun than Guy's, and just adds a much needed deadpan yet kind character for the others to react and play off of. Guy should have died. Say it with me, he deserved it and he earned it. The 8 gates throughout the duration of the series was always described as one of the most physically taxing jutsus, and opening the final gate, the one, that's literally called death, gives the user immeasurable strength at the cost of their life. The choice to revive him, save his life, whatever, doesn't only go against what was hundreds upon hundreds of episodes of build-up to see a character really actually open the gate of death, but it also turns one of the most passionate, physically active shinobi in Konoha into a literal handicap that will soon be forgotten within the narrative. We'll see you later, Wheels. Ino Shikacho is really the only team that gets any realistic development in screen time outside of Team 7. Team Guy loses most relevance outside of Part 1, and Team 8 is hands down the weakest, future Uzumaki waifu aside. Shino gets poorer nighttime visibility, and Kiba's first decree as Hokage is a bit closed-minded. Really? Everyone has to get a dog? Everyone? Where are you getting all these dogs from? Come on, man. I guess let's talk about Neji, and more specifically his death, the most avoidable, pointless death in the entire series, used only to add stakes to the 4th Shinobi World War. I found it a bit weird for one of the most well-known characters at handling projectiles dies to predictable wooden spears. Why would he not spin to win? Beyblade it up? This is a world of predestined greatness and inherited strength, and the one character given the belief to rise above the hand he was given and his inevitable death because of the family he was born to ends up dying in his youth against a prophecy and being avenged by a pair of reincarnated gifted youth. Ouch. I feel like we're missing somebody. So let's talk about my favorite character in all of Naruto. Going into the anime, I expected Rock Lee to be comparable to someone like Tingle from the Legend of Zelda series, this awkward, far out there comic relief character where you either love him or hate him, let's just say that. Someone far more popular in Japan than he is with Western audiences, and yeah, I was basically right. Heck, both of them even got their own spin-off series. Rock Lee, a ninjutsu-less character in a shinobi world who tries to push forward with effort, passion, dedication, and hard work alone. When I think of comic relief in a lot of shonen series, I just think of these absolutely grating characters. Heck, you can barely even call them characters, just sort of these one-note vessels for repetitive jokes and overused, over-the-top LOL XD anime expressions. I was surprised at not only how Rock Lee's comedy came out, mostly unintentionally just from his passion and overall kindness rather than a self-aware jester role, and he's also a really capable fighter and is extremely impactful in Part 1. And yeah, it's easy to view Rock Lee as just an inferior mirror image of Guy because the series basically goes out of its way to show us how similar they are both in appearance and combat. So yeah, it's hard to justify giving Lee fights to the far more intimidating foes encountered in Shippuden when you can just continue to use Guy for these larger-than-life battles and essentially the only showcase of pure taijutsu post Part 1, while also serving the additional purpose of highlighting the bond of rivalry and friendship between him and Kakashi, helping develop our favorite copy ninja as well. However, I have 2 words for you in favor of Rock Lee. Drunken fist. While Lee's fight with Kimimaro was ultimately taken over by Gaara, hey, it was a rough matchup, this was Lee's last big battle, and I felt that it would set the pace for his continued growth throughout Part 2. From his recovery after Gaara's crippling blow, and even Tsunade confirming he should just give up on any dream of being a shinobi, he makes his triumphant return, standing up against the strongest enemy in the Sasuke recovery mission arc, if not all of Part 1 minus your Akatsuki and Big Bads, of course. And not only that, Lee comes in with Drunken Fist, a hilariously unpredictable fast jutsu praised by his opponent, and another notch in the amount of references Lee's character has to classic martial arts cinema. 1 3-year time skip later, my mind was racing with all of the possibilities and progression one of the hardest working and constantly training strong fighters would be capable of. He fights himself in that one scene, but so does all of Team Guy. He's late to Pain's attack of Konoha, missing basically everything, and then he loses out in screen time during the war to Tenten. Fucking Tenten. Outside of Guy serving the purpose of a lot of what Rock Lee can do, I feel the main contributing factor of him not being popular or used often in Shippuden is the fact that he was so popular in Part 1 to the point where this dude has an entire aforementioned chibi spin-off series, Rock Lee and his ninja pals. And no, it's not just a 4-coma gag miniseries with 3-minute episodes. This is a full-blown 51-episode, full-length, 24-minute episode anime. Don't get me wrong, I have no interest in chibi, but I love Rock Lee and hate myself, so I don't really have a choice here. I have to watch it. Do I feel that a spin-off was worth sacrificing a well-established character's presence in a sequel? No, of course not. Just stings a little bit less. Even if I cannot do ninjutsu or genjutsu, I want to prove that I can still become a splendid ninja. Rock Lee's ninja way was actually fulfilled all the way back during the Chunin exams. He humbled Sasuke, stood up against Gaara, honored Guy, defended Sakura, and inspired Naruto. So in a way, Lee did impact Shippuden after all. This may be a hot take, but Part 1 of Naruto to me is just superior in just about every way to Shippuden and accomplishes everything it sets out to do. While being on a far smaller scale, everything in the original Naruto just felt like it had so much more weight because they're all still kids rather than these glowing monster men later on. So when they're thrown into situations like Orochimaru's hatred of Konoha or the Akatsuki and their unknown objectives, when they do stand up against them, they're fighting against a past that they had no control over to defend their friends and those they care about. It's a lot more personal. It adds a much needed sense of impact and edge that Shippuden slowly begins to lose and dulls down despite seemingly upping the stakes every other episode. Part 1 is all set up introducing Team 7, the Akatsuki, the past Kages, Sasuke's growing resentment, and the trio eventually learning from the legendary Sannin, so Part 1 passes the ball and was up to Shippuden to make the shot, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Shippuden is bad. Heck, on a purely technical level, despite some really weird looking art I began to notice kind of around when Sasuke was getting the band together, it's visually overall far more pleasing than Part 1 thanks to the addition of course widescreen and far more faster, well-shot fights. Shippuden was ambitious, probably a little too ambitious, consisting of these two massive arcs, the Akatsuki and the Fourth Shinobi World War. Sure, you can argue that some of the side stuff with Sasuke is technically a differently named arc, but it all ties into Itachi, so it's kind of the same end goal. If you're like me and you miss the smaller, more concise arcs like Land of the Waves or the classic cream of the shonen crop, like the Chunin exams, giving the entire cast equal opportunities to shine, you'll most likely be disappointed by Shippuden's attempt at this larger-than-life epic saga, with the only real breather being an intermission in the form of the brief Kage Summit, which in turn is just set up for the war. Towards the end of the series, it felt like the mangaka or the director of the anime or whoever was in charge of this fucking pacing got a bit too enamored with a rapid fire of reveals, twists, and main character power-ups. They lost sight of what made the series special in the first place. It was the story about a secluded shinobi village and the ninjas in training with distinct abilities, strengths, and weaknesses. Sure, Team 7 eventually reunites, but it never felt like it was for any meaningful story reason or progression, but rather than just a simple showcase to make the viewer go, "Whoa, they fight good now." Well, sure, it's normal to have your characters and story progress, especially in a shonen. I should at least be able to recognize the basic themes, but instead, part 1 to part 2 feels more like comparing an original to a spin-off or a spiritual successor rather than a full-out sequel. There were very few moments where I could go back to part 1 after watching an important moment or reveal in part 2 and be like, yeah, it all makes sense now, or wow, would you look at that. Part 2 is fun, flashy with epic fights fought by these larger-than-life combatants. Part 1 is tighter, simpler, and feels a lot more personal. I like them both, but I can't say I like them together, especially with Shippuden undermining a lot of the revelations and character moments in part 1, but hey, we'll talk about that later. I also feel it's equally as important to not only discuss the separate parts of Naruto, but the time skip in between them. I love time skips. I love watching my baby boys and girls become big dudes and big gals. I love seeing new variations on their abilities, new hidden moves, and how much the landscape and world has changed in what may only be weeks or months for us, but can be several years in shonen time. Naruto's 3-year time skip felt unrewarding, but that was sort of the point. So my ideal follow-up episode post time skip is to introduce the main character some point in the middle or towards the end of the episode, having them interrupt a fight, taking out some goons or a strong enemy from the past with relative ease, and a big reveal of their new appearance and demeanor. But in Naruto's case, part 1 sort of ended at an interesting point. This huge, evil organization is quickly progressing in their plans, with Naruto serving as an important key component in them, and Sasuke becoming a missing nin and siding with Orochimaru in his constant pursuit of strength. This all sets up a ticking time bomb, making Naruto's return to Konoha not really this epic return to form of our protagonist, but more of a, oh good, you're back, we've got a lot of shit going on sort of moment. Heck, the first fight we see of teenage Naruto is him swiftly losing against Itachi, and the supposedly super secret dangerous jutsu Jiraiya warned him not to use is just a bigger Rasengan that is quickly followed by another long stretch of training, less than an arc after 3 years of it. It basically just feels like the series needed a time skip more than it really wanted one. Would I have preferred a Land of the Waves styled short mission for Naruto to pub stomp through, showing off how much he learned? Sure, but on the other hand, I really do like the idea of shutting down a post-time skip Naruto so early on. It really made Itachi and the Akatsuki as a whole far more feared than before. Again, like most elements of Shippuden, I am oh so ever conflicted. The best of the best when it comes to action and fights in shonen anime not only have to look good, but they have to feel good. There has to be a reason for the characters to clash, there has to be meaning behind each and every blow, and the conclusion of the battle has to change something. It has to have some weight for either of the fighters, the onlookers, or even the world itself. I can easily and confidently say that just about every fight in Naruto fits the first descriptor. These are some of the best looking, best directed fights in all of shonen anime, even dating all the way back to Gaara vs. Rock Lee in part 1. Most epic series concluding bouts in other titles can only wish to be half as well paced and choreographed as any given fight in Naruto. So let's talk more about the second part of what I said, and that's the fights that mean something, the more story, character-driven exchanges of kunai and whatnot. In other words, I'm just gonna gush about my favorite fights for a little bit. Gaara vs. Rock Lee, what else is there to say? It's one of the few fights with my baby boy, and takes place back when Lee's an established threat to both Sasuke and Naruto, and a character to be feared for his absolute strength and speed. A ninja who can't use ninjutsu, pushed forward by effort and the words of his sensei alone, facing off against a child of sand manufactured from birth to be a weapon. I think the one element that makes this fight is easily the pacing, more specifically in the terms of Rock Lee's fighting showcase. Sure, Gaara has a bunch of sand and stuff like that if you like that, but the perfect execution of Lee just combing through his entire arsenal just to have a chance to even scratch his opponent is just really powerful. From the removal of the weights and that seems great, to inspiring words from the sideline, to opening up the gates in a last-ditch, self-damaging effort to prove his ninja way. It's a child backed into a corner while never really feeling totally one-sided either, despite the outcome. Did you hear that? That was the sound of a character's relevance dying. I mean, here's one that I haven't really seen too many people talk about, and that's Sasuke and Itachi against Kabuto. I just love the atmosphere for this fight, the dark, damp cave with stalactites overhead, really the perfect setting for Kabuto, once the calm, collected spy who always had the upper hand, to somewhat obsessed with power, inheriting all of Orochimaru's strengths along with his mental weakness, quickly losing grip on reality. Itachi and Sasuke fighting as this kind of improvised team, and Itachi leading Sasuke through flashbacks and past memories between the pair is great, all leading up to the use of Izami, one of the best conclusions to any of the fights, and a fitting end for Kabuto, at least for a little bit. Obito versus Kakashi, it's fast-paced, exhilarating, tense, and effortlessly shifts through and plays around within flashbacks. While brief, it is essentially perfect in every way, and I'm sure is often the top contender for top 10 Naruto fight list plaguing your YouTube feed, so I'll just leave it at that. Was it good? So let's talk about the big dude fights. That was basically the only way I could think of to call, you know, when the guy summons the big guy or becomes the big guy. You get the idea. So you know in Power Rangers, when the monster of the week formula, where the Rangers intercept and quickly dispose of the beast, only for the big bad of the season to bring them back, bigger and stronger than before, towering over the city below. So if you know every time the Rangers fight a monster that it's eventually going to become big, then why should you care about anything that happens before that point? And that's basically how I feel in any given fight within Naruto, when Sasuke uses Susanoo, or when a character uses summoning jutsu or anything like that. It's just a spectacle. There's never any tension or any part of the encounter that moves the fight or the story forward. These are never as visually dynamic or interesting as the non-big dude fights, and they're all just a lot slower. They're not shot as interestingly. It's just fluff in between the first half of the fight and the second half, when the character really tries or uses their new form or super special jutsu. I mean, there's probably one or two times, like when Gaara and Naruto fought at the end of Konoha Crush, where the big dude fight was more than just a big dude fight, but apart from that, they just never really did anything for me. This continues on to Jutsu, which is the series power a la Devil Fruit from One Piece or quirks from Hero Academia. I like to think there are two distinct parts to Jutsu. The first half, you have your Chidoris and your Rasengans. They're simple, they're flashy, and they feel grounded within the established shinobi world. Watching Naruto and Sasuke work their way up to these two abilities feels rewarding and earned, and both are hyped up to be these near or S-class level abilities, which is pretty good for a pair of genins. And then there's the other half of Jutsu, and which I think deters a lot of the outsiders looking in, where we sort of deviate from ninjutsu quite a bit, and it basically becomes this wizardry magic sort of thing. And I know Rasengan and Chidori are rather flashy in their own right, but it gets a little bit too much. Even the internal logic of the series falters with this a bit. Like, really, it took until the Fourth Hokage in essentially the modern age to develop an ability of spinning your chakra into a ball, but by the second Hokage there was a completely near-perfect reanimation and sentient independent clones. Like, then of course we have Glowy Naruto 2, and Glowy Naruto 3, and who could forget the fan favorite, Glowy Naruto 4. Don't get me wrong, obviously when you have 15 years of shonen to work with here, your main character needs these incremental increases in power and new flashy forms to keep things interesting and the power level always progressing, but having all four of these chakra and sage modes all being introduced within what is essentially the same arc is just complete and utter burnout, and a far cry from the far more meticulous development of the Rasengan throughout the Akatsuki. But let's end on a positive note and talk about Sasuke versus Naruto, as I genuinely feel it was one of the best fights in the series, a showcase of the evolution of the combat we've seen from Land of the Waves all the way to the dimensional hopping Kaguya battle, eventually devolving into a sloppy, bloody brawl between two old friends, all ending with both of them collapsed and armless atop Madara's and Hashirama's statue's fingers, forming the sign of reconciliation. And well, I don't want to over-exaggerate too much and get a little bit mushy here, but this was one of the most clever pieces of visual storytelling and moments that made me so genuinely happy in not only all of shonen anime, but in basically any anime I've seen in quite a long time. While the action scenes are dynamic, the characterization, dialogue, and script are anything but. Masashi Kishimoto is an author who is more interested in showing you cool things rather than making talking about them cool. Conversations not occurring during the action, especially those in Shippuden, always just felt so flat, with an overuse of shot, reverse shot, and no interesting use of perspective or any unique angles and shot composition. While this may seem like nitpicking, and Naruto is first and foremost an action-oriented battle anime, boasting ever-reaching power levels and grand spectacles showcasing anything from summoning jutsu to Jinchuriki, you also have to keep in mind that for every impactful fight there is at least just as much, if not more, time setting it up and talking about the aftermath. And if these scenes of characterization that aren't shown through action and jutsu, it often gives the feeling that any extended dialogue, instead of complementing and forwarding the action, it just instead feels like you're applying the brakes, saving budget and padding out the runtime, which is never really a feeling you want to have as a viewer who wants a bit of story between the shuriken throwing. And I mean, there are exceptions, like anytime my boy Yamato's on screen, love that guy, or even when different generations of shinobi are just talking, as it never really mattered what they were talking about. It just felt larger than life with all the Hokage shooting the shit. That was great. I could watch that all day. Now, Naruto at its worst is with something like Itachi's story, and hold on just a second. Before you get upset, let me explain myself. I love Itachi. I love forehead taps. I love forehead taps fake out into a hug true combo, and I especially love the reveal of his true intentions and the burden Itachi had to bear. All of that was great. The first time I heard it, Itachi's storyline is retold several different times in the second half of Shippuden, and basically full, adding a small little nugget of additional, nearly insignificant information like, wow, the third Hokage, who was a nice guy, what was a nice guy? Whoa. Keep in mind, this is from me watching the Kai edit, which is essentially as close as you can get to the mangaka's intentions. I'm sure they play this thing on loop in vanilla Shippuden. They literally dig this dude up so we can hear it all over again. Talk about beating a dead Uchiha. It turns a complex character just trying to do his best by his younger brother, his clan, and his village into a chore that stains the mood just like dead parent blood stains the floors. You have hundreds of chapters to think of an explanation for chakra, and you go with some Adam and Eve forbidden-ass fruit shit? Are you serious? Okay, I'll stop. But let's change pace a little here and talk about one of the most crucial aspects of any good shonen outside of your fights and the characters that partake in them, and that's, of course, world building. So I'm totally a bit spoiled after series like One Piece, Hunter x Hunter, and many others just gliding through complex world building and development, but because of these greats, it makes it all the easier to point out the weaker uses of this, and oh yeah, Naruto's could use a bit of work. I'm not going to go too hard into it because for all I know, Boruto, Naruto's spiritual successor, could rectify a lot of my complaints, and I do genuinely appreciate and feel that both the original series and Shippuden both handle things like the past quite well. It's no wonder why Naruto is so well known for flashbacks, and thankfully they are all done rather well, even with side characters and more minor events that help things feel a bit more lively, such as watching Konoha change over the years, greatly adding to a sense of nostalgia for a fictional village you have never been to in your Japanese cartoon. Where the series falters is basically everything outside Konoha and its immediate vicinity. Who can forget such classic locations such as forest in Konoha, forest outside of Konoha, forest near sand, forest between Konoha and Sound. Oh, I see you're someone of the finer taste. Well, may I introduce you to the forest near the border of Hidden Cloud Village. Classic. Look, I'm not new to long-running shonens and budgeting, and I can understand that forests in Naruto are equivalent to oceans in One Piece. If all water is wet and all trees have leaves, you can just reuse a lot of composition and resources and save that almighty yen to animate more straws on Luffy's head, or pay the VA just a little bit more to say Date Bayo with just a little bit more gusto. But the difference between reuse of One Piece's backdrops for sailing and Naruto's forest is that one of these series has entire fights, several long episode scenes, and even entire arcs that take place in them. Spoiler, it's the one with the fox boy. But don't let all of that nonsense and petty complaining distract you from easily the biggest plot hole that can be found within my much-loved Part 1. Taking place shortly before the start of the Chunin exam finals, Kiba and Hinata, who were eliminated through the preliminaries, arrive to the venue late. The venue, keep in mind, where people from all of the villages flock to watch the young, bright shinobis battle, yet despite this, we're conveniently able to find 2 open seats right in the front row. What a fucking hack. I still have no idea how I feel about the ending in the second half of Shippuden as a whole. I've rewritten this piece so many times and have gone back and forth between optimistic understanding to brutal teardowns. After a while, it was easily the hypest and most enjoyable interactions in the entire series, with the Hokages, Orochimaru, Kages, and Sasuke all coming back, with plenty of fan service of the other shinobi teams that had a lot less focus. Just began to overstay its welcome. The spectacle is obviously still there, and what's happening on screen is pretty cool and exciting, but it's all sandwiched between redundant fights and fodder, along with repetitive jutsu explanation and obvious exposition, adding to just this pure sensory overload. I don't need the flying Raijin, arguably one of the simplest jutsus in the entire series, explained to me and flashback to every time something cool happens with it. It takes away from the 2, maybe 3 seconds of the viewer actually engaging and realizing it themselves, and it absolutely just kills the pacing. Shippuden's limited OST and the clear favoritism of only a handful of tracks is also more apparent than ever, when the same tone and thus the same music is essentially played on loop, drowned out only by the nameless shinobi fodder grunts. I hope you like that one creepy track introduced all the way back in Akatsuki, you know, the one that goes, "Hey," because you'll be hearing it on loop during the climax of the war throughout the villain's several reveals and transformations. The main thing is that any given one of these moments, fights, reveals, what have you, would have been so impactful and special in the middle or end of any given arc, but when they all come one after another, with the only breather being repeat explanations of the scene that came before, it's just nothing but static. On earlier drafts and notes, I thought I had the ending all but figured out around episode 390, but to say that things change entirely would be a drastic understatement, not only for the ending, but the entirety of the anime. It's a catch-22. Either Kishimoto was fully aware on where he wanted to take Naruto and how it would end, clearly ignoring everything before and during the 4th Shinobi War arc, including undermining Neji's death, or the mangaka had no idea what to do and figured a war, aka back-to-back battles, would be enough time to just sort of wing it. Reincarnation and prophecies undermines not only Naruto and Sasuke's accomplishments, trials, and tribulations, but also Hashirama and Madara's, having their ideals, motivations, and fates being controlled even to the smallest degree by the reincarnated sun's chakra just undermines everything up until this point. And this isn't a midpoint reveal or a twist that happens at the start of the proverbial 3rd act of Shippuden. This all comes at literally the end, the last handful of episodes, the end of Naruto's story, a story that the viewer has been following this entire time. Has the entire perspective changed. It's unfair, it's insulting, and worst of all, it's kinda lazy. But here's where we get to that whole I'm very conflicted on the ending part, because I really enjoyed what follows it. Not really the power level increase or the new forms that Sasuke and Naruto get, but the last big bad herself, Kaguya. Maybe it was just me being tired of the literal 100+ episodes spent in the same pit, and dozens upon dozens of fights that took place in the same drab setting, so introducing the dimensional creating and hopping Kaguya was a much needed change of scenery, but the fight was different enough, and she really did have this otherworldly divine aura to her we haven't really seen yet. But then on the flip side, all of the exposition and plot reveals, mostly told by Black Zetsu, who's a big reveal in his own right, weren't terrible or anything, but my reactions consisted of, yeah, I guess that makes sense, and alright, sure, why not? And I should really be more invested and exciting during these endgame reveals and twists. I'm conflicted, haha. I mean, there's probably more I can talk about and tear apart, but I'm sure my thoughts on Shippuden's conclusion will continue to change as often as Naruto's used Rasengan, which is a lot. This video is way too long. Hey, there's more. Naruto the Last, a movie about moon men, cuckolding, scarf, brutality, and hold on a second, does the Raikage have a giant death laser? Canon Epilogue BTW. All in all, pretty boring movie. All of the Konoha time skip stuff was great, along with Hinata and Naruto romance tension throughout it, but it just feels very movie, if that makes any sense, not really using the budget in any meaningful ways. Lots of big, appealing, yet empty settings with the characters doing very little to engage with them, lack of tension, predictable pacing, forgettable, lackluster villain. Heck, there's not even any henchmen for the others to fight apart from puppet jobbers. I mean, at least it tried to expand on the Rikudo Sennin lore, and it's cool to see the Byakugan get some love after being snubbed for so long, but all in all, nothing really too special. And I've been working on this video on and off for so long now that I'm already a dozen or so episodes into the series' spiritual successor, Boruto, Naruto's Next Generations, and heck, I'll probably be caught up by the time the video even goes out. But wow, is Boruto just so realized and refreshing, and sure, it has Naruto's established world and characters to thank for it, but I'm sure it has plenty to do with a new director and a new vision. Chief director of the series, Abe Noriyuki, has worked on the greats like GTO and Yu Yu Hakusho. It just makes the series feel so competent right out of the gate. It's first and foremost just a good anime, both visually and fundamentally. Shot composition, lighting, and colors are immediately more interesting and varied than in all of Shippuden, and the students within the academy feel like actual kids, with friend groups, cliques, boys and girls clubs, and just the way they all interact. It handles the idea of a prophecy a lot more tongue-in-cheek, and Boruto as the lead isn't just Naruto 2.0, he's unique enough to set him apart from the Uzumaki swing-setting flashbacks and dead parents' sad times. While it's too soon to say if this is a good follow-up to Naruto, and the confusion and the gray area of the manga and the anime each being sort of canon, like how Dragon Ball Super handled its adaptation, is something I was never really too fond of, but there are already several things that drastically change some of the positives and negatives I've touched on throughout this video, and I'm sure there are plenty more upcoming details to change my mind once again on those. Regardless of what lies ahead in the future, positive or negative, Naruto's storyline and his goal of becoming Hokage will remain the same. They showed symbolism through fucking Uno! Okay, I'll stop. I loved Naruto. I regret none of the time I spent with both series, and I'm eagerly looking forward to not only seeing where it goes through the eyes of the next generation, but also going back through years of films, OVAs, and yes, even the chibi antics of a Mr. Rock Lee. But despite cherishing the time I spent living vicariously through Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, it was overall an adventure plagued by filler, repetition, and two greatly unequal halves. For those looking for smaller, more condensed arcs or more focus on side characters found in part 1, ironically enough, you can find that within Shippuden's much detested filler arcs. Fans of the fight choreography and the battles may get tired of the character interactions and exposition that breaks up any given ninja battle, while conversely, for those who enjoy the world building and plot dumps that can be found in other shonens may feel that too much time went into the fighting. Loving Naruto is loving a conflicted series, but for those at some point within its 15-year duration fell in love with the world, the characters, and the fights that paint it, there's nothing that can change their complete passion and dedication to this shinobi shonen classic. Believe it.
Naruto, Naruto, believe it, believe it.
Here I am with my ninja clan, here we stand. Naruto, I'm on my way. Naruto.